Some seasons begin not with a celebration, but with silence. You start to notice the slow drifting of people, the stillness that wraps itself around your days. The calls stop coming, the plans fall through. Even your prayers feel like they echo back unheard. It feels like loss, but it's not. It's a pulling away not by accident, but by design. When God places his hand on your life, he often removes you from what once held your attention. He quiets the noise of the world, so he can awaken the song of his voice within you. And yet in the beginning, that silence can feel like abandonment, like exile, like the ache of being forgotten. But what if this wilderness is where he plans to meet you? What if the isolation is not a punishment, but an invitation? The word says, "Therefore, behold, I will allure her, and bring her into the wilderness, and speak tenderly to her." This is the heart of the one who calls you not to leave you alone, but to bring you closer than you've ever been. In this video, we'll walk together through the quiet seasons, the lonely places, the sacred ache of being set apart. You'll begin to see the purpose behind the pause, the meaning behind the separation. You'll discover that being chosen often means being hidden for a time, not from love, but for it. You are not lost. You are being led. And the same God who led Moses through the desert, who whispered to Elijah in the cave, who called out to Hagar in her wandering, that same God is calling you now with tenderness, with intention, with love. This message is not just a teaching, it's a confirmation. You've been set apart for something holy, and heaven is closer than it feels. There comes a moment, often unnoticed at first, when the voices that once filled your world begin to fade. The ones you used to turn to for comfort no longer feel as close. Conversations grow shorter. Invitations stop arriving. Even the people you thought would walk with you forever begin to feel like strangers. It doesn't make sense, and it hurts more than you'd like to admit. There's no argument, no falling out, just silence, distance, a quiet shift you can't explain. It feels like something is being taken from you. But what if something is being made room for? God, in his mercy, often removes the voices that drown out his own. He does not do it to leave you empty, but to draw you deeper. There is a kind of aloneness that becomes holy when it is held in his hands. When you no longer have others to lean on, you begin to lean into the only one who has never left. You begin to notice his voice now in thunder, not in noise, but in the quiet that follows the letting go. Some friendships are seasonal. Some connections, though sweet, cannot go where God is taking you. The separation feels personal, but it is purposeful. God is not removing love from your life. He is refining it, teaching you the sound of his voice above all others, not just for guidance, but for nearness, for relationship, for trust. It is a lonely road, but not an abandoned one. Christ himself walked it. In his final hours, even his closest friends fell asleep, ran away, or denied him. But in that solitude, he clung to the Father. He showed us what it means to walk alone but never be alone. "My sheep hear my voice," he said, "and I know them, and they follow me." It is not the loud voices that shape us in the end, it is the quiet ones that remain when all else falls away. You may feel the ache of absence, but it is not emptiness. It is space being carved for something eternal. God is teaching you to walk by his whisper, not by the echo of others. To know him not through noise, but through intimacy. To follow not with the crowd, but with your whole heart. This silence is not void. It is the beginning of something sacred. There are seasons when movement stops, and life no longer follows the rhythm it once did. The plans that once excited the heart begin to unravel. Dreams pause in mid-air. The doors that once opened easily now stay closed, no matter how hard you knock. Everything slows, and it feels as though time itself has turned against you. What once flowed now stands still. But there is something sacred in the stillness, something holy in the slowing down. It's easy to see delay as failure, easy to feel forgotten when nothing moves. But there are moments when God halts the motion, not to punish but to protect, not to stop you but to meet you. In a world that teaches constant striving, God teaches us to be still. And in that stillness, something begins to shift. What looked like a closed door begins to look like a doorway to peace. What felt like a setback becomes a call to sit at his feet. When the noise fades and the striving breaks, his voice begins to rise, not with demands, but with comfort, not with pressure, but with presence. This is where he pulls you close, where he removes every distraction, every plan made in your own strength, and brings you back to the center, to himself. Be still, he whispers, and know that I am God, not just in the miracles, not just in answered prayers, but in the waiting, in the quiet, in the slowness that feels like loss but is full of divine presence. Sometimes the greatest gift is not what begins, but what stops. The job that didn't come through, the relationship that didn't grow, the opportunity that fell through. These are not endings. They are invitations, a call to listen, a space to breathe, a doorway into trust. When everything slows down, it does not mean you are falling behind. It may mean God is placing his hand gently on your life, saying, "Come away with me. Let me show you a pace that doesn't wear out your soul. Let me teach you rest that the world cannot offer." In the stillness, his voice carries more clearly, and in that voice there is no rush, no fear, only peace that lingers, and the gentle knowing that he is still God, and you are still his. There is a quiet stirring that often comes in seasons of isolation, a longing that words cannot fully name. It does not shout, but it lingers. It presses gently on the soul like a question waiting to be answered. Why has everything changed? Why does the heart feel both empty and full at the same time? This ache is not confusion, it is awakening. It is the spirit beginning to breathe a new hunger into the deep places of the soul. When all the usual answers no longer satisfy, when the surface no longer holds your gaze, something deeper begins to call. You find yourself searching not for noise, not for comfort, but for truth. A truth that goes beyond opinions, beyond traditions, beyond what you've been told. A truth that lives and breathes and transforms. You begin to seek not just knowledge, but righteousness. Not just comfort, but clarity. Not just answers, but God. Isolation does this. It pulls you away from what once distracted. It removes the voices that filled the silence. And in that space, your heart begins to ask questions it never had time to ask before. Questions that are not born of doubt, but of desire. Questions that stretch your spirit and prepare your soul for something deeper than you've known before. God is not afraid of these questions. He welcomes them. He draws near to the one who seeks him with an open heart. This hunger, though painful at times, is a sign that he is already at work within you. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, Jesus said, for they shall be filled. He does not stir hunger in us without also preparing the feast. The emptiness is not avoided, is a vessel being shaped to hold more of him. There will be moments when you feel alone in your seeking, when others don't understand the depth of what you're feeling. But take heart. This path is not one of isolation, it is one of intimacy. The hunger you feel is sacred. It is not a weakness. It is the soul waking up, to what truly matters. In the quiet, he feeds you with truth. Not all at once, but slowly, gently. As you walk with him, step by step, he reveals more. And with every revelation the hunger grows, but so does the peace. This is how God awakens his chosen, not with thunder, but with longing. There comes a time in the quiet walk with God when something within begins to loosen. What once felt certain starts to feel foreign. The names you used to answer to, the titles, the roles, the expectations, begin to lose their grip. They no longer carry the same weight. They no longer feel like home. It's not rebellion. It's not confusion. It's the slow, holy unraveling of what was never meant to last. There is a deep work God does in the wilderness, not just around you, but within you. He begins to peel away what the world placed on you, the labels you wore to feel secure, the masks you put on to be accepted, the performance that made you feel valuable. One by one they fall, and it feels like loss, like something inside is dying. But beneath that shedding, something eternal begins to rise. You are not who you once were, and that is grace. God is not punishing you by stripping things away. He is bringing you closer to the person he has always seen, the one not shaped by success or failure, not defined by others' opinions, the one he called by name before the foundations of the world. There is silence in this part of the journey, and sorrow, but there is also clarity. As the false identities fade, the noise quiets. You begin to hear the whisper of something deeper, a name not spoken by people but breathed by God. I will give him a white stone, the scripture says, with a new name written on it, known only to the one who receives it. This is not a name for the crowd. This is a name for the chosen. In the shedding, God reveals. In the silence, he speaks. And when all else is removed, what remains is pure and true and holy, who you are in him, not who you were taught to be, not who the world needed you to be, but who you've always been in his eyes. This is not a step backward. It is a return, a sacred becoming, a quiet homecoming to the soul God formed with care and called by name. When the old no longer fits, it is because something new is being prepared. And in that hidden place, he begins to write your true name. There is a moment in the quiet seasons when the soul begins to feel a gentle pull. It does not come with force or fear. It is not loud or demanding. It comes softly, like a breeze through the trees. A whisper that reaches deep into the heart, saying only one thing: come. It is not a call to speak many words. It is not a command to impress. It is not a performance. It is an invitation. God is not asking for perfection. He is asking for presence. A few moments. A quiet space. A heart turned toward him in stillness. There is no need to have the right words, no need to explain the silence. He already knows, and he already waits. When everything around you slows down, this quiet call becomes clearer. The things that once occupied your time no longer hold the same pull. The distractions fade. The noise becomes hollow. And what remains is a longing to sit with him, not to be seen by others, not to prove anything, but simply to be close. But when you pray, Jesus said, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. This is the place he calls you to now, a hidden place, a sacred space, a meeting that does not require a stage or an audience, just the unseen God and the soul that longs for him. There is healing in this kind of prayer, not because every request is answered right away, but because something deeper is touched. The heart begins to soften, the wounds begin to breathe. The questions no longer need immediate answers because peace comes before understanding. In this space, you are reminded that you are known, not for what you do, but for who you are. This call to deeper prayer is one of the clearest signs that God is near, not just around you, but within you, drawing you closer, not for tasks or titles, but for communion, for rest, for love. You may not feel strong in these moments. You may not know what to say, but still, you feel Him calling. And somehow, even without words, that is enough. There is a quiet work that happens in the hidden places. When the noise is gone and the crowd fades, something deeper begins to shift. The hands that once held everything tightly begin to loosen their grip. The heart that once stood tall begins to bow. In the stillness, pride begins to break not with shame, but with gentleness. Not with force, but with truth. Isolation humbles the soul. It strips away the illusion that we are strong on our own. It reveals how fragile our strength has been, how limited our plans, how dependent we are on grace we did not earn. It is in this sacred breaking that God draws near, not to crush, but to restore, not to shame, but to shape. There is something holy in the lowering of oneself. When all the striving grows quiet, when there is nothing left to prove, the soul becomes soft soil, and in that soil, God plants calling. He does not build upon pride, He builds upon surrender. Not the kind that gives up in defeat, but the kind that lays down in trust. To kneel is not to fall, it is to rise in a different way. It is to come before God with empty hands and say, "Only you can lead me. Only you can lift me." This is not weakness, this is worship. It is the place where fear begins to fade, where the soul becomes open to the whisper of direction. "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand," the scripture says, "that He may lift you up in due time." Not in your time, not when you feel ready, but when the work in you has been made deep, lasting, true. In this place, you stop asking for thrones and start asking for grace. You stop chasing platforms and begin seeking His presence. The heart becomes quiet enough to receive, patient enough to wait, and low enough to hear the soft voice that pride always silenced. This is where many are called. In the field of humility, in the soil watered by tears and tilled by surrender. And from this ground, God begins to grow something eternal. Something that cannot be shaken, because it no longer stands on self, but on Him. There comes a quiet turning in the Sula shift, so gentle it is hardly noticed at first. The wilderness, once feared, no longer feels like punishment. The silence that pressed so heavily on the heart begins to feel like peace. The loneliness softens. The ache begins to feel holy. This place that once felt like exile starts to feel like home, not because the pain is gone, but because God is here. The cries for escape grow quieter. The restless prayers fade into stillness. Something deeper begins to rise, no desperation, but awareness. A sacred question takes the place of sorrow. Lord, what are you showing me here? And in that question there is peace, there is reverence, there is the beginning of wisdom. The wilderness is no longer something to run from. It becomes the place where the soul learns how to walk slowly, how to lean, how to love without fear. No longer rushing, no longer hiding. Just walking with God, step by step, with no need to see what comes next. In this still place, the heart begins to heal. Not in loud miracles, but in small mercies. In the soft wind, in the whisper of Scripture, in the tears that fall without shame. What once felt like silence now feels like His voice. What once felt like loss now holds a strange and sacred fullness. Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? These words are not about escape. They are about transformation. She is not walking alone. She is not running. She is leaning. That is the fruit of the wilderness. Trust, not built in comfort, but in dependence. Not formed in clarity, but in surrender. To lean is to love. To walk with God through dry places and still believe He is good. To rise not with answers, but with Him. To be changed not by what was gained, but by who you became in the quiet. This is beauty. This is holiness. This is the gift hidden in the wilderness, and once your heart sees it, you will never see the silence the same again. The wilderness is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a deeper, sacred journey between your heart and God's. Each moment of silence, each unanswered question, each step taken alone has drawn you closer to the one who never truly left your side. You were not forgotten. You were being shaped, set apart, called higher. He led you away, not to break you, but to bless you with Himself. And now, like one who rises from the wilderness leaning on her beloved, you carry a new strength, quiet, humble, steady, a strength that does not come from striving, but from stillness. So, if you find yourself in that quiet place today, breathe. Let the silence hold you. Let the questions rest. God is near, and in His time you will see what He was forming in the dark. You are chosen, you are loved, and you are never alone. If this message spoke to your heart, we invite you to gently support this space by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue sharing peaceful, spirit-led words with others who may need them too.